What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. Liminality is the latest strike to be added into the Grandmaster rotation, and I've got to say, this strike can be a handful when on Grandmaster difficulty. So today we'll be going over a quick and easy guide covering all the best loadouts, strategies, tips, and tricks to make this Grandmaster as easy as possible. This is one of the more lengthy strikes, and it'll probably take you right around 20 to 30 minutes to get it done, if you handle this strike the right way, because otherwise this could end up taking you several hours and several attempts. You'll need to complete this strike on its Grandmaster variant in order to complete your Conqueror seal and for Guardian ranks. It's a good week to jump into Nightfall since double rewards are up for grabs, and the Slammer Stasis Sword is the featured reward. The Liminality takes place on the Pale Heart, and you'll see a mixture of Hive, Dread, and Taken enemies. There will be Barrier and Unstoppable champions, and these will show up in the form of Barrier Knights and Unstoppable Phalanx. Your enemies will receive a bonus in Void damage, while you receive a 25% increase to Void and Arc damage. Heavy machine guns will also be overcharged this week. When it comes to the best loadouts for this Grandmaster, prismatic builds for all classes will be a great option because of their add clear capabilities. You'll find yourself in a lot of close quarter situations, and each segment of this strike will send out an overwhelming amount of adds that will quickly swarm over you. I found that having a hunter with Orpheus rigs and tether is an invaluable benefit when those swarms of enemies spawn in. It's for that same reason that warlocks might want to consider using the Speaker's Sight to give your team some added survivability. Titans can really spread out this week and use a variety of top tier builds. The Peregrines would be a great option since there's a ton of champions, but since there's a high density of adds, you would also find a lot of success out of a Syntho Strand build or Consecration. Since there are Taken enemies, the Wishender and Malfeasance are going to be great exotic options, and each of these come preset to handle a champion. I had the most success out of the Graviton Lance.
Lance? What the fuck did I just hear, Lance?
There's a ton of void shields throughout this strike, and with a bonus in damage, this became an extremely effective pulse rifle. The Outbreak Perfected would be another great exotic pulse rifle to use. The Leviathan's Breath would be a great choice in heavy since it stuns unstoppables, and it also emits a huge knockback burst that makes enemies volatile. The Dragon's Breath and Witherhoard would also make great options towards controlling those swarming enemies. As this strike begins, you'll find yourself in the impasse, heading towards the Abscess. You can take the time to clear out this first group of enemies, but there's no champions here, so you could also just skip straight through. As you make your way towards the first main encounter of this strike, you'll need to watch out for Boomer Knights and a few Shriekers. When you're in the room with the two Shriekers, don't forget about the Barrier champion on the opposite side, because he could run off and hide. And if you don't make sure he's dead, you'll miss out on Platinum later. The first main encounter requires you to clear through 3 waves of enemies to break open 3 seals. There will be several Barrier champions, wizards, a Lucent Knight, and several Cursed Thrall. There's even a few of these Thrall as you first drop in, so be sure to kill those before you drop down and kill yourself or a teammate. And whatever you do, if a teammate is right next to a Cursed Thrall, don't shoot at it, let your teammate get away first. The best way to handle this room is to rotate and rotate often. Enemies will spawn in at every section of this area, so you can't really wear concrete shoes. I find it best to rotate between where the entrance of this room is and the far right. This way you have a few structures that'll block line of sight from your enemies. You just need to be sure to keep your head on a swivel and watch out for those Cursed Thrall. I would also reduce how much time that you spend aiming down sights, because these enemies will quickly sneak up on you. If you have a tether, this entire encounter will be done and over with pretty easily, especially if you have Orpheus rigs, because you'll be able to continuously chain your supers to quickly cut through the enemies without having to burn through a ton of ammo. And another benefit of tether is that it highlights enemies, which is going to be helpful since there's no radar. Once the Lucent Knight pops up, he needs to be a priority, because if you can take him down instantly, then everything else, except the champions, will despawn, making this section much easier. In the next main encounter, you'll have to activate Ahamkara Skulls by retrieving Taken Essence. You'll have to harness the power of Indiana Jones to pull this off, because you won't have much time, and you'll have to navigate through dangerous booby-trapped corridors. And while you're retrieving the essence, there will continue to be enemies and an unstoppable champion that spawns in the center. I would consider the left essence to be much easier to retrieve than the right. You just have to run and hurdle through some barriers. But the right side is where things get tricky, because it requires you to destroy 3 sets of Blight Eyes while the room fills up with lava. You might find it beneficial to send 2 players to the right side so that one person can grab the essence while the other person handles the eyes. But I found that warlocks using an arc or solar buddy will have a pretty easy time getting through this side. You just need to be sure to activate those before you pick up the essence. Once you've activated both Ahamkara Skulls, the enemies will despawn and the boss will teleport away. The next main encounter of this strike is what I would consider to be the most challenging, because there's not a lot of safe zones. There's going to be extremely dense waves of ads that spawn in right off the bat. And as you're clearing through these enemies, the floor starts to fill up with lava, and certain rooftops take on blight. And from what I'm aware, there's no cheese spot for this. And since there's no place for you to hide, you're going to need to take on a more aggressive approach to this encounter. You'll need to move through these groups of enemies quickly and rotate as you're doing it. This is where the Orpheus rigs and the Graviton lance will really excel. I found it best to circle through the whole area and knock out the rooftop snipers and the unstoppables before the Grims start spawning in. If you can get the snipers and the Grim handled quickly, you should have the luxury of being able to set up on one of the single-story rooftops that's towards the back right. But you're still going to need to rotate through this area because enemies are going to spawn in everywhere. After the Harbinger is dead, you'll need to interact with the veiled statue so that the lava will recede. Now, if you end up having someone die and get their ghost stuck in the back section where the lava doesn't go away, well then that player will need to either wait until you've started the final encounter, that way their ghost gets moved forward. Otherwise, they can close their game and just rejoin the session. Once you've gotten through this section, you can speed through to the final encounter, because there won't be any more champions until the final boss. This final encounter is broken up into 3 phases. In the first section, you'll have to clear through several waves of enemies and drop the Tormentor's health down. After that, you'll have to activate 2 more Ahamkara Skulls. The mechanics are the same, but the layout for both sides will be much different. The left side hallway is much more advanced, with lava closing in on the sides. The right side requires you to defeat 3 sets of Blight Eyes, but you'll be enclosed into a very small section, and you'll have a very limited amount of time. Standing closest to the door is where I found it to be the safest, and this is another opportunity for Arc and Solar Buddies to step up and help you solo this. After you've deposited the Taken Essence, you'll have another opportunity to deal damage to the Tormentor, but there will be a wave of Taken enemies that spawn in towards the front, followed up with a wave of Hive that spawn in behind you. And as you can see, this is an encounter where using the Orpheus rigs and chaining supers can be so beneficial. Once you've defeated the Lucent Wizard, that Strand Harbinger will spawn back in, and after it's defeated, you'll transition into the final damage phase. At this point, the Tormentor's shoulders will be knocked off, and he will be in his aggressive state, so you'll need to put up as much distance as possible. There's going to be a lot of structures all around you, so be sure to rotate as much as possible, and always keep some sort of structure between you and the boss. If the Tormentor grabs you, you're pretty much dead, but if teammates are able to deal enough damage or set off an ignition, then you'll break the Tormentor's hold. This can definitely be a panic-inducing encounter and a stressful Grandmaster overall. But as I've said many times before, the use of exotics like Graviton Lance and Malfeasance, along with Tether and a source of healing, will get you through this. It's something that everyone has the ability of completing. You just have to play smart, and you need to know when to play aggressively and when to play passive. And hopefully, by using some of the tips and tricks that we've gone over today, you'll have a great deal of success getting through this week's Grandmaster. With that said, I wish you all the best of luck out there. Let me know your thoughts about this week's Grandmaster, its adept reward, and the current state of Destiny. Let us know down in the comments below, and let us know what build you decided to use. If you're in need of getting a good build put together, be sure to check out the Mobalytics link that's down in the description, where you can find a ton of great top tier builds. If you're a new Light Guardian just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new place to call home, then be sure to check out the Discord link that's also down in the description and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.